fellow constitutionalists, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Dan Clements Show, a Christian political talk show. This is episode 820. I'm your host, Dan Clements, your constitutional warrior, fighting for your right just to be an American. It is June 13th in the year of our Lord 2017. Remember, we're a hyphen-free, PC-free zone here. God is still in control, and He does love you. And we do what we do here at the Dan Clements Show, knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade men of the truth. And folks, this is what we're all about. I added a new meme to the show. Truth is the new hate speech. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. And this is by George Orwell. Matter of fact, that his book 1984, I guess, has been flying off the books. There's actually a movie out. It's an older movie, but I've watched that, and I've been told it's fairly close to the book. It describes the book pretty good. And so that probably, I don't know what the viewership of that is, but I know I can watch it on Amazon on my Fire Stick. But, we persuade men of the truth here. I'm broadcasting live from the Hemlock Studios here in the beautiful central Susquehanna Valley in the great Keystone State. And it's supposed to get up to 90 degrees again today. I'm sitting before the great John Wayne desk with my window air conditioning unit in. I made a mistake yesterday. I thought the fan would do enough up here. I didn't think it was super hot up here, but my computers started acting funky. So I started checking temperatures on CPUs, and I'm like, ah! So I shut everything off, and I spent the next hour to hour and a half. I put the whole house, we have a whole house fan that goes into a window in the bathroom. And this is like a pretty big, like 1200 or 1300 CFM fan. So when you have that turned on full blast, exhausting heat out of the house, you can stand downstairs in the stairwell and you can feel the breeze coming past you. So it does a good job of cooling down the house. You keep the doors closed and the windows open just minimally, and it keeps the humidity out a lot more than it does the temperature. But that wasn't doing me any good in my room because I have to keep the door shut because of unwanted guests, as it were. My daughter, my puppy dog, my cat, stuff like that, when I come up in here, and it disrupts the show. So I was using this last year. I finally got it in the window, cleaned it up, turned it on. I turned it on before I went downstairs to have breakfast so the room be nice and cool. Everything's working so far. So I'm sitting here in a nice, cool, well lit. I don't know if you guys noticed that I have lights in the back. Now some of them look kind of harsh. I'm getting new, like the lights over this way. The lights over the cans is a little bit harsh because that's a regular fluorescent. I want to get a soft fluorescent and put up in there. Sort of like on my desk. my desk. I'm looking at this all backwards, right? My desk over here. It's kind of a soft light, light as well as my over by the USS Hunley AS-31 picture over on the wall. Some of my brethren in the Navy who served with me on this Hunley will recognize that picture, maybe, if they zoom in on it. But I have a lamp over there too that's so I'm not, so the camera's not working so hard picking up light, and I put a smaller bulb in the light overhead. So that's actually, I keep that on now. It's not washing my face out or anything. If you notice, my cheeks are a little bit red. I was out in the sun yesterday mowing grass. It was pretty intense. I had I took my hat off just to let me get some sun on my handsome features here. So they got a little bit red. They're not burnt, just a little bit red there. Probably the Irish coming out in me. Today we're going to be talking about, on the show, about reason and respect in defense of freedom and liberty. And as usual, I have a lot of articles that I put up here. I told you yesterday about this, the closing of the American minds. And there was they sort of held a symposium, but it was more in writing than it was anything else. And I have the other articles to that I've been going through and reading. And boy, what a mental, intellectual feast these articles are. Talking about this, Alan Bloom's book, that's who wrote the Closing of the American Minds, and I've actually ordered a copy of it, paperback is like $7, and I want to read it. I like that. I like Kindle, but I still like the books. so I can thumb through them, make notes. That may be a thing of the past with this new writing thing that you can read Kindle books on, and you can take a special pen and make notes on it and save them. And so I think that's going to be easier to highlight, the whole 9 yards. Um, once that's like $500 or $600 now. As that comes down in price a little bit, and I can afford it without doing any damage to the family budget, I would like to get one. And my wife even said she would like to get one too. But I do a lot of reading. My wife comes in and I don't have the TV on a lot of times. I got the laptop sitting on my lap and I'm just reading. And she says, "What you doing, hon?" I said, "I'm reading." She goes, "Wow." Okay. I do a lot of reading and prep for the show. I read the articles. At the very minimum, I skim through the articles. But if it's a very good article and well written, I'll take the time to read it word for word. But I have one, two, three, four. I have 4 articles from the first 4 below the short Bible lesson at the show notes page at danclemenshow.com for episode 820 that are the companion to yesterday's show and the article I was talking about the closing of American minds. And the one theme that I've been getting out of this, I skimmed through them quickly, and then now I'm going back and reading. I read 2 of them word for word last night. And the biggest thing that I'm seeing here is the lack of reason and respect. And some agree with Bloom that it goes back to the 60s, and some don't. I haven't read the book, so I want to make up my own mind about that. However, I get the impression that they all agree on certain aspects, and one of those aspects is reason. That there isn't any reason anymore. People don't like to reason things out, and honestly, if they don't like to reason things out, if they hear a contrary opinion, they don't respect it, or they won't respect the individual that's giving that opinion. My Facebook antagonist contacted me this morning on Facebook and was berating me before an article that I shared about James Comey, and said, "Oh, great job, Dan, that you're tearing down President or Comey to make President Trump look better." I didn't say anything in there about that, and I was actually talking about an article on one of her favorite sites, and about the daily cost, the sexual predator, and all this kind of stuff. And I told her, I says, I said, I didn't vote for Trump. Don't support him. He is my president, so I support him in that way. I try not to disrespect him at all. But I'm not afraid to stand up to him like James Comey seems to be afraid to stand up to him, or Loretta Lynch. And I told that to her. I said, James Comey, in my opinion, I had a higher opinion of him, but after his testimonies and everything come out, I don't have a very high opinion of him. He didn't stand up to Loretta Lynch. He valued his job, his position, and the prestige that garnered him. But he didn't stand up for truth. He didn't stand up for reason. He didn't stand up for justice. And he didn't do it with Loretta Lynch and Barack Obama, and he's not doing it with President Trump. So, yeah, my opinion of Comey is very, very low, and I didn't attack him to build up Donald Trump. And I don't do that. I don't attack one person to build somebody else up. I deal with that person and their ideology. I didn't say anything personally against James Comey. His performance on the job leaves a lot to be desired. So we don't reason things out. Too many people have a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on around them, and then they just, without researching, without reasoned, factual, truthful research, they just have a knee-jerk reaction to what you say and just publish that out there. And a lot of what she had to say in the article was cut and paste from other articles. It wasn't her words. Some of it was, but most of it wasn't. And most of it didn't even pertain to what I was talking about. She went off on a total tangent because of her idea of my comments. Instead of commenting on the article, which you'd think they would, instead of commenting on the article and the veracity and just the veracity of the article and whether you agreed with it or not, she chose to attack my stance on the article. And I'm editing a video about that. It's Daily Costas video, or not video, but Daily Costas article calling President Trump a sexual predator. So yeah, she didn't even comment on that. You know how the anti-freedom media out there on the internet is just beside themselves with all this. So it's again, without reason and respect, we're not going to get anywhere when we try to discuss things with folks. Today's show is being brought to you by one of my affiliate marketers, Sears Parts Direct. You get 10% off of any lawn equipment and more, your parts for your lawn equipment and anything else. You heard my story about me fixing my gas stove. You probably heard about that ad nauseum. But I got a new igniter for the oven, and it worked fine. It came when they told me, they said it was going to be delivered in 2 days. It was delivered in 2 days. Took me all of about a half an hour or so, maybe I wouldn't really keep track of time, to put that on the stove, and it works fine. And so if you're the handyman around the house and you fix things and you need parts and you don't want the hassle of calling around or going around to other places in town trying to find these parts or have them order them, go directly to Sears Part Direct. Go to the DanClementShow.com and click on the Sears Part Direct widget, and it'll take you over to the site. And if you go over there and you're buying parts, you put in offer code 90055 and you get 10% off your parts. That's a good deal, folks. That's a real good deal. All right, today's daily Bible reading comes from the book of Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 11 through 12. Proverbs chapter 3, verses 11 through 12. My son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor detest his correction. For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, just as a father the son in whom he delights. The quote meal today comes from Martin Luther. I have held many things in my hands and have lost them all. But whatever I have placed in God's hands, that I will possess. By Martin Luther. Words to live by, folks. Words to live by. Short Bible lesson comes from a friend of mine, Doug Hamilton. He used to preach down the road in Camp Hill, PA, at the Camp Hill Church of Christ. Now he's down in New Road Church of Christ, down in Waco, Texas, I believe it is. And he wrote this little article here. It's called "He Who Eats Roast Preacher and Roast Elder for Sunday Brunch Will Eventually Consume His Own Family." And he gives a real life example of what happened with a family. And far too often in the church, people are too critical of the preacher and or the elders or deacons that actually serve them. And I actually been having ongoing over the years when I was an elder, and since I had to step down from the eldership because elders had moved away and we weren't prepared. You know, we're trying to get folks trained up in the way they should go and possibly become elders. However, that didn't happen, so I didn't resign. I had to step down because there was not going to be a plurality of elders. And this was a huge problem in the eldership as I saw it, that there were folks that second-guessed the elders all the time. And not that I'm against people coming up and trying to find out what the problem is or even putting their 2 cents worth in, but if you don't have the whole picture, and this was almost 100% of the time, folks who, and I bet you if you asked other elders that are serving now or former elders, they'll tell you the same thing. Folks that come up and want to know what's going on in the congregation, and you can't tell them because of some personal information, and you just tell them, look, the elders are handling this, that's not good enough for some people. They want to be totally involved in it, which when they have no business being involved in it. Really, none of what this, and many of the situations that we were going through had nothing to do with other folks. They just wanted to know about it, what was being done about it. And the answer was, because of some sensitive information that we couldn't divulge, we said, well, we're handling it, and we're going to try to take care of it. If we need your help, we'll ask you. And like I said, that wasn't good enough. And then there was a lot of, just talking. And so, and this isn't just our congregation, and it's not rampant in our congregation, but this happens all over the brotherhood. So we need to be careful of that. When we roast the preacher or roast the elder, or he who eats roast preacher, roast elder on Sunday brunch will eventually consume his own family. And so you need to go to the DanClementShow.com and click on that. It's a very good story. It's a really good example of how not to act. All right. I'm just going down through here. This was in the news. Fox 2 Now was reporting a CNN story about Obamacare enrollment slides to 10 million point three, and this is something that we need to be aware of. And like I said, all these articles are on the show notes page over at the danclemenshow.com right after the show. So what's happening is people aren't enrolling, and the enrollment's starting to slowly go down and down and down. And then we come to find out part of the enrollment, people are enrolling in it, but in order to have it activated, you have to pay your first month's premium. And a lot of people aren't doing that. They're enrolling probably just to be able to tell the IRS, and I'm just assuming here, I don't know this for a fact, I'm spitballing, but probably tell the IRS they had insurance, or they have insurance, they're not paying a fine with the IRS, but then they're not paying their premiums. And then when they get sick, they go in. It's a mess. Obamacare is a mess. It's imploding in and on itself, and we don't even have to help it. That's the neat thing about it. We don't even have to help Obamacare. You know, it is imploding on itself. But anyway, let me see here. Just over 375,000 people picked plans through the federal exchange, healthcare.gov, in those last 2 weeks, and more signed up in 11 states than ran their own marketplaces. And they were talking about what was happening, you know, why this is sliding down. And it's lack of choice, cost, you know, the actual cost of the policy. So the whole thing is a house of cards. It really is. So that's in the news. That's actually, it'll be over to danclemenshow.com on the show notes page over there. I have a couple good videos. I'm not going to show them to you on the show here because they're like 5 minutes each. But if you go there at the bottom of the show notes page, lawsuit against Comey claims FBI illegally spied on government and Trump. And this is reported by Pearson Sharp at OneAmericanNews.network. .com over to One American News Network. It's OANN.com, and it's a YouTube video. I have the link up there to that, and also another one. And One American News Network seems to be doing these really good exposés, and they're putting them out on YouTube and also showing them on their own channel. And they're doing a fantastic job over there putting these out. The other one is exposing the far left Antifa. A look at the assault on the First Amendment. And this is a report by Marty Golingen is the reporter's name, and if I have his name spelt wrong, I do apologize. I was trying to find it on One American News Network, and for some reason I don't have a list of reporters on there. I typed in the name several different ways. It wasn't coming up, and they didn't. I wish they would put it down in the bottom of the their notes page at YouTube or Facebook, wherever they're sharing these out, but they didn't. So if I spelled his last name wrong, I apologize for that, but it's pronounced Golingen over at One American News Network, and that's also a YouTube video also talking about exposing the far left Antifa. And I've said it on the show before that the Antifa movement in the United States of America is acting more fascist than any other fascist I've ever seen. And I haven't seen too many fascists, but I've seen history. And they are acting just like the fascists over in pre-World War II Europe. It's amazing to me. There's a let me get rid of a couple things here. There's a lawsuit going on in Pennsylvania that I didn't know about, but I've heard about this type of situation going on, but never really confirmed it. I don't know if this actually confirms it, but this is going on down in a Philadelphia school district. There's a $500,000 lawsuit filed against PA school district, claims teachers paid to teach not work for the unions. And so basically what it is, the Pennsylvania school district is facing a lawsuit. They're claiming more than $500,000 in tax funds have been used to pay for so-called ghost teachers. The plaintiffs, Americans for Fair Treatment, say the money was used to illegally pay the salaries of union employees who are not teaching in the classroom. They also claim these employees or ghost teachers have been illegally boosting their pensions while working for the union. American for Fair Treatment is demanding union employees return their salaries to the schools. So they were finding out, and they were doing some investigation, probably some Freedom of Information Act type stuff. The Americans for Fair Treatment have found out that this Philadelphia school districts, or this at least this one, paid $500,000 for teachers that were never in the classroom and didn't teach, but they're members of the union. And this is, I've heard this practice going on with companies, which I don't know how they get away with that, but I've heard it going on with unionized companies, and I've actually heard other, whispers that I can't confirm of this going on in other school districts throughout America, where they have these ghost teachers that are on the payroll, but they never seem to work, but no one seems to question them. And that's, folks, therein lies the problem of government running these type of things. And I've heard these stories in big businesses, but I find it hard to believe because of their accounting methods and stuff like that. However, like I said, they could just been stories, but we have a lawsuit now that's going on in Philadelphia. I'm going to try to track this and keep an eye on this and let you know what happens to this. But somehow they have proof that this was going on, and they're demanding that this money be paid back from the union to the school district. And that's a lot of that's a lot of change. That's a lot of coin to be going out the door, and you're not getting anything in return for it. So that's in the show notes page today. Sort of just going through some of these. President Trump's personal attorney to file leaking complaint against Comey. This was posted on June 9th over at One American News Network by Trey Yanks. He's the chief White House correspondent for One American News Network. New information released Friday indicates that President Trump's attorney, Mark Kasowitz, will file a leaking complaint against former FBI Director James Comey. The complaint is set to be filed with the Department of Justice Inspector General and Senate Judiciary Committee. All of this comes after Comey testified Thursday before the Senate Intelligence Committee, saying that he gave personal memos to a friend who ultimately handed them over to the New York Times. I asked a friend of mine to share the content of a memo with the reporter. I didn't do it myself for various reasons, but I asked him because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel, Comey said. President Trump tweeted about the testimony this morning saying, wow, Comey is a leaker. The White House is currently forwarding all requests for comments on the issue of the leaking to the president's personal legal counsel. So they're actually filing a leaking complaint against Comey. And I was reading somewhere else in all my readings, going through my news feeds this morning, and I couldn't confirm it, but I think it was just a reporter wishfully thinking that President Trump would do this. They were putting forth the situation that President Trump might fire the special counsel looking into all this. And I'm like, these people are just reaching so bad. Matter of fact, I have shut down in the past, not that I'm blocking people, but people that are after me on Twitter, that respond to my comments on Twitter, some on YouTube, a lot on Facebook, that are talking about this Russian leaking. I've shut down more arguments with saying, look, if Russia had the infrastructure and the intelligence to hack anything in the United States of America, don't you think, because of the political fallout and the international fallout and all that kind of stuff, don't you think they'd be smart enough to be able to cover the tracks where you couldn't tell who was doing the hacking? I just put that out there, folks, and it's true. Wouldn't you think that they could cover their tracks? And so if you go back to the Vault 7 WikiLeaks and you go reading through some of the stuff there that was divulged, one of the things that was divulged there is how easy it is for hackers to cover their tracks and point the blame to somebody else. And so if that ability's out there, I would sure think that Russia and China and that would have that ability, and that people that are doing the hacking, like I said, I'm just spitballing here, but it would be funny if it all came out in the wash eventually that it was some pro-Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton basement-dwelling hacker that was doing all this hacking and making it look like Russia was doing it just to gin up the story and try to get Trump impeached or in trouble or whatever. It would be funny. It would, to me, it'd be funny if it came out like that. I don't think the DNC would particularly care for that. So, so we have that. We have that there. Judicial Watch. I got a couple things from Judicial Watch. That's another group from CNSNews.com and MRC. They're all part of the same news group. They have a really good site on their or page on their site calling "No One's Above the Law," and this is following the Hillary Clinton email scandal. And they have all these news items that they put out, and the good thing about CNS News is they reference everything. They show you their proof as you're reading down through their articles, which a lot of the anti-freedom groups don't do out there. And if I keep talking about it, eventually they will, but you know, I don't know when that time's actually going to be coming. So they have that over there, and I was just sort of perusing through that, and it was kind of neat to see the progression of things with this Hillary Clinton email scandal. But they also have, it's let me go over here and get into this. Their weekly update, The Smoking Gun. A new Hillary Clinton email confirms she used BlackBerry against security advisor. And this was posted on June 9th over at Judicial Watch. What did the Russians know and when did they know it? A question for today and President Trump. Actually, we should be asking this about the years when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. The illicit system she cobbled together to send and receive emails was essentially transparent to the Russians, and for that matter, anyone else with a smidgen of technical expertise. As the latest example of this, we have submitted new evidence to the U.S. District Court Judge Emmett G. Sullivan showing the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton knowingly used an unsecure BlackBerry device, being warned by the security hawks against doing so. We obtained the email record in a response to a court order from our May 5th, 2015 lawsuit against the State Department, Judicial Watch Incorporated versus U.S. Department of State, and it gives a number, the case number there. After it failed to respond to our March 18th, 2015 Freedom of Information Act request seeking all emails of official State Department business received or sent by former Deputy Chief of Staff Huma Ahmadin from January 1st, 2009 to February 1st, 2013 using non-state gov email address. So they go down, they talk about this whole, their whole smoking gun. It's really not a theory, because they got these emails, they're going through these emails, and we know as a matter of course and fact that Hillary Clinton's email server at home was not secured. She was using unsecured BlackBerries, but we can't. And I'm kind of torn about this. They say, well, they smashed the BlackBerries up, so we can't really tell. There should be some type of electronic footprint that they can actually look at that isn't on those BlackBerries to see if the emails are actually encrypted or not. I mean, I think that's a no-brainer there. I think there's a little smoke and mirrors going on when they say they can't tell because they don't have the devices. I don't know. You know, with all the electronic surveillance going on and all the record keeping, you think that would be somewhere. You think that would be somewhere they can prove that. So this is a weekly update, and they have this over at Judicial Watch of what they're doing and where they're at in the process. That's why I gave you that other website about, or their other page about No One's Above the Law, and they're talking about Hillary Clinton there. So that's, like I said, that's another good one to look at there at the show notes page at danclemenshow.com. This one here, as I was going through all my news feeds, this one here sort of piqued my interest, okay, and really got me thinking about a couple things. Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat, California, outlined the next steps in the House Russia investigation on Tuesday, June 13th, on MSNBC's Morning Joe. Now that FBI Director James Comey had told Congress about his various conversations with President Trump, and the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee wants to hear from the FBI agents who heard Comey's end of the conversation. Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat California, said interviewing additional FBI agents is among the committee's next steps, which he outlined Tuesday on MSNBC's Morning Joe. Now, I'm going to stop the reading there, and I'm going to talk about this just for a second. If the FBI director, the former FBI director, James Comey, or even the present one, has a conversation with anybody, president, janitor, doesn't matter, has a conversation with anybody, and there's other people in the room that can at least hear his end of the phone conversation, etiquette demands, reason and respect demands that he inform the person on the other end of the phone that there's people listening to the conversation, at least what he's saying in the room, that he's not alone in the room. And he either should ask those people to leave or ask permission to put it on speakerphone so everybody can hear. And that's not an unreasonable request. Matter of fact, if I was dealing with somebody as high profile and powerful as President of the United States and I had other people in the room, this conversation, I would definitely go the second route. Sir, and I wouldn't even ask. I would just tell the president, sir, I have you on speakerphone and I have so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so sitting here listening to this conversation. So let's talk. Now, either the president's going to tell him he wants to be private or, whatever, right? But let the president know someone else is in the room. And it doesn't seem like, and we don't know for sure because President Trump hasn't really said much about it, and I haven't really looked at his tweets today, but it seems to me that President Trump may not have known there was people listening to James Comey's end of the conversation. However, even though they were listening to his end, let's say it wasn't on a speakerphone, they're just listening to what FBI Director Comey was saying, they still don't know what was being said on the other end of the line. So it's just, all they're going to be doing is confirming what Comey said, if they didn't hear what President Trump said. And again, this whole thing sounds kind of suspicious to me because in our electronic age, and I was a dispatcher and we had conference calls and everything like this, we would frequently have the speakerphone on at the middle of the desk, and we'd go around and say, hey, look, I got you on speakerphone, and these people are in here listening to it, go. All right? And this, I think far too often in business and in government, not so much business, but in government, we get ourselves into situations because we want to try to be too private, or whatever our reasons might be, and I don't want to, impugn anybody's motives for why they do what they do, but the reasons can be judged and questioned why they did what they did. But you would think, at least from President Nixon on, that if there's any type of conversations that were had over the phone and you weren't sure of, like James Comey, I don't trust the President of the United States. I didn't hear him say that about Barack Obama, which President Obama proved himself time and time again he was untrustworthy. But you didn't hear that coming out of James Comey, that President Obama was untrustworthy. But man, oh man, I made up my mind. And this is, the more and more I dig into this and listen to things and read about his testimony and actually go back over his testimony with a different idea in my mind, the more and more I read about this, the more I don't like the way James Comey operated as the FBI director. I just really don't. Because if he didn't trust the president, then don't have private conversations with him. Just refuse to have private conversations with him and tell him, sir, I'm uncomfortable having a private conversation with you. I would rather have a sit down with my direct supervisor, which would have been Rosenstein, because Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, had to recuse himself from the Russian probe. And so I'd say I cannot have a private conversation with you, sir. I have to have my direct supervisor with me. And if I can't have that, then I have to have one of my deputy directors to come with me so we can verify. And folks, this is biblical. This is biblical. Do not accept an accusation against an elder or somebody else without 2 or 3 witnesses there to back up what was said. Because then it becomes a he said, she said. And if these were private conversations where nobody else was allowed in the room on either end, and I think President Trump would be foolish from this point on to have these type of private conversations without somebody there with him to confirm what was being said and have things on a speakerphone and be very above board about this, and take away any opportunity for the anti-freedom folks to have an accusation against you. I mean, that's just my advice, whether he takes it or not. Okay, I'm not in control of that. But my point is that if former Director Comey, had people sitting in the room and he failed to acknowledge that to President Trump, I don't think he's breaking the law or anything like that, but it just shows a lack of respect and a lack of etiquette on former FBI Director Comey's part, and it goes to speak to his character, which it's every day that goes past, his character, the level of his character keeps going down, 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 to the point where people in the anti-freedom groups that agree with Comey and hate Trump and want to do anything they can to destroy the Trump presidency will believe anything Comey says and actually pile on to the president things, accusations like sexual predator. And to be fair, they said like a sexual predator. You don't use those terms unless you're actually thinking, yeah, this guy, because of that tape, that hot mic incident about grabbing female genitalia so many years ago, this guy's a sexual predator. He is. He's just like one. He sexually harasses people, and his actions are just like, and I'm having a video. I'm going to finish up this video I recorded on this. But his actions are sexual harassment, even though they're not sexual in that specific instance. And I'm like, really? I was like scratching my head, like, these people really don't like Donald Trump. And so this drama is going to go on for a long time. And quite frankly, getting back to my overarching topic for the week, and actually an overriding principle of the show is seeking truth. When we talk about, therefore knowing the fear of the Lord, we persuade folks of the truth. 2 Corinthians 5, verse 11 and following, or verse 11, the first part of that. And first off, we need to find the truth. And if we can't find the truth and facts to back up what we believe, we should keep that to ourselves. We should not be fabricating fake news stories and putting out assumptions that can't be confirmed and calling it news. That's why we're in the mess we're in right now. That's why we have so many people out there running around like chickens with their heads cut off, saying that the sky is falling because Trump's this and Trump's that, because they never took the time to research it themselves. And even if they did and couldn't find anything to bolster their position, they still want to report on it, or they still want to put it on social media and put it out there for the public to see, to try to help tear down this president, because they either disagree with him or they hate him so much because they beat their, candidate Hillary. And so, this program, we're dedicated to trying to dig down and find the truth. And if I'm reporting something to you, I'll tell you if it's my opinion or not. My thoughts. I'm just spitballing here. Things like that. But even those are backed up by something I read that doesn't look right. And that's why I tell you, this does not look right with this last story with Adam Schiff and Comey and his phone calls and stuff like that. That doesn't smell right to me. Not at all. And that's why I wanted to comment on that. Now, there's another article in here. This is written by Ulrich Baer. Now, he's a professor up at New York University, and it's called What Snowflakes Get Right About Free Speech. And I want to read this article, not the whole thing, but I'm going to read a pretty good part of this to you. This was posted on April 24th of this year, and this is part of this the closing of American minds that we talked about yesterday. And this is something that we deal with on a daily basis here at the DanClementShow.com, whether we're on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, on Twitter, on Facebook, no matter where we're at talking about these things. This is where we engage this whole thing. And this is something we've been doing for quite a long time here, trying to engage the closed mind of American people. And your mind should never be closed, but it should never be let me put this way. Your mind should never be ever closed, but it should never be so far open that your brains fall out and you stop thinking about things. You just accept everything that's being told to you. And so both of them are a dangerous road. And matter of fact, the same people that closed their minds, I think they had open minds to begin with, and they were so open their brains fell out, and then they just locked their skulls up and didn't let their brains back in. Let somebody else do their thinking for them, in other words. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. Okay, and this is Ulrich Bear. My view, and like all the views expressed here, does not represent the views or policies of my employer, New York University. Is that what my views is? And let me start this over without that little caveat in there. My view is that we should resist the temptation to rehash these debates. Doing so would overlook the fact that a thorough generational shift has occurred. Widespread caricatures of students as overly sensitive, vulnerable, and entitled snowflakes fail to acknowledge the philosophical work that was carried out, especially in the 1980s and 90s, to legitimate experience, especially traumatic experience, which has been dismissed for decades as unreliable, untrustworthy, and inaccessible to understanding. The philosopher John Francois Lyotard, and that's exactly what his name is, I looked it up, Lyotard, Lyotard, or Lyotard. There's a couple ways on this program I got on the website that helps me pronounce words and names. Best known for his prescient analysis in the postmodern condition of how public discourse disregards the categories of true, false, and just, unjust in favor of valuing the mere fact that something is being communicated. Examine the tension between experience and argument in a different way. Instead of defining freedom of expression as guaranteeing the robust debate from which the truth emerges, Leopold focuses on the asymmetry of different positions when personal experience is challenged by abstract arguments. His extreme example was Holocaust denial, where invidious but often well-publicized cranks confronted survivors with the absurd challenge to produce incontrovertible eyewitness evidence of their experience of the killing machine set up by the Nazis to exterminate the Jews of Europe. Not only was such evidence unavailable, but it also challenged the Jewish survivors to produce evidence of their own legitimacy in a discourse that has systematically denied their humanity. Lyotard shifted attention away from the content of free speech to the way certain topics restrict speech as a public good. Some things are unmentionable and undebatable, but not because they offend the sensibilities of the sheltered young. Some topics, such as claims that some human beings are by definition inferior to others, or illegal or unworthy of legal standing, are not open to debate because such people cannot debate them on the same terms. Like you said, this Lyotard, he seems kind of strange to me, and I'm reading this and putting this out there. I'll make some comments here in a little bit. The recent student demonstrations at Auburn against Spencer's visit, as well as protests on other campuses against Charles Murray, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Coulter, should be understood as an attempt to ensure the conditions of free speech for a greater group of people rather than censorship. Liberal free speech advocates rush to point out that the lives of those individuals must be heard first to be rejected, but this is not the case. Universities invite speakers not chiefly to present otherwise unavailable discoveries, but to present to the public views they have presented elsewhere. When those views invalidate the humanity of some people, they restrict speech as a public good. I want to stop the reading here. This is part of reason and debate and respect for one another. If you can't debate these undebatable things, how are you ever going to come to the truth? I mean, my goodness, when those views invalidate the humanity of some people, they restrict speech as a public good. And we talked about this last week about the public good. You have, and see, this is where we're getting everything backwards. You have a right to free speech. You can say whatever you want, no matter how hateful, hurtful that is. That is part of your protected rights in the Constitution. Those are part of your God-given rights that no government, anybody, should be able to restrict. Never. But the flip side of that is you don't have the right to force people to listen to you. If you don't want to hear those negative viewpoints and debate these things, don't go listen to them. But because of freedom of association, you don't have the right to protest and block people from going to listen to that stuff because you think, and this is very subjective, it invalidates the humanity of some people. That's a very subjective term because in order to understand and see if somebody's point of view or what they're talking about invalidates somebody's humanity, you have to bring it out into the public discourse, civil public discourse, and debate it. If it's never debated, you'll never know if it invalidates anybody's humanity. And there is one of those terms, invalidate somebody's humanity. That's one of the social justice tyrants terms. You know, these feel-good victimization terms that we're victims. You invalidated my humanity. Okay, someone says something against me that someone thinks invalidated my humanity doesn't make me less of a human, or doesn't take away from my humanity, because my humanity doesn't depend on what you say or think about me. It doesn't. My Christian walk doesn't depend on what you say or think about me. That's a relationship I have between me and the Lord and other fellow Christians. But it doesn't depend on you. My humanity does not depend on you whatsoever. Now, in times past, were there people, and there still is today, we talk about slavery in the past. Slavery still goes on today in the Islamic run states over in the Middle East and across the world. Sex slaves and child prostitution, all that kind of stuff still exists in these countries and stuff like that. And the practice of slavery, actually physically enslaving somebody, does take away from their humanity. But as a free-born, free-living, liberty-loving American, my humanity doesn't depend on you. Sorry. You know, sorry to burst your bubble. And if you think airing differences of opinion out in the public discourse, civil public discourse, out where everybody can see and hear, somehow invalidates somebody's humanity, you got it all wrong. I'm here to tell you, you just got it all wrong. Now, he goes on to talk about this. He goes on to say, in such cases, there is no inherent value to be gained from debating them in the public. In today's age, we also have a simple solution that should appease all those concerned that students are insufficiently exposed to controversial views. It is called the internet, where all kinds of offensive expression flourish unfettered on a vast platform, unavailable or available to nearly all. Now, let me stop there and stop that particular comment there. Too many times on the internet, and I've been guilty of this in the past, and I've been trying to get better at this. We live in an echo chamber. We only want to hear opinions that agree with us because it makes us feel good. It validates our feelings. It validates our existence. And again, there are people in the freedom groups, or in the old paradigm you used to use, on the right. There are people, I should say the right. Those on the right who still think that they need validation externally from themselves. And folks, that's a dangerous way to live your lives. To wait to get validation from somebody else leads to all sorts of problems. Drug abuse, alcoholism, sexual abuse, a whole bunch of different situations we don't really need to be getting into. If we're always waiting to be validated from an external source, especially an external source we may not agree with or don't want them speaking for us to begin with. Now, that's different. We're talking differently with Christianity. Christianity, I'm justified. God, and I'll have to think about this a little bit more, as I'm always thinking about things. I don't think Christ validates me at all. Just the fact that I'm here by the grace of God is validation enough. What Christ does through his redemptive work is he justifies me before God's eyes, in God's presence. And it's not something I work for. That work's already been done. I've been baptized into Christ in October of 1982. Jesus Christ did the redemptive work on the cross by the death, burial, and resurrection. You know, but to validate me, I'd have to think about that a little bit more, but I don't think so, because, you know, God approaches me as a human being. He knows I'm a human being. He knows I'm flawed, and yet he still loves me. He still loves me, and through his son I can find that justification, that forgiveness of sins. Okay? Anyway, just keep an eye on the time there, folks. The great value and importance of freedom of expression for higher education and for democracy is hard to overestimate, but it has been regrettably easy for commentators to create a simple dichotomy between younger generations' oversensitivity and free speech as an absolute good that leads to the truth. We would do better to focus on more sophisticated understanding, such as one provided by Leotard of the necessary conditions for speech to be common public good. This requires that the realization that in politics, the parameters of public speech must be continually redrawn to accommodate those who previously had no standing. Again, this Leotard seems to be coming from the idea that free speech should be controlled. That you can't just go out there and say something. Getting back to the example of the internet, this show, the Dan Clemens Show, proves that you can get your opinion out there. Now, I look at my numbers. I don't have great numbers. I have fantastic numbers as far as listening on Blog Talk Radio, but I'm fairly new to the YouTube universe. I have very small numbers on there. But I've been on Blog Talk Radio since late 2000, or actually I got on Blog Talk Radio early 2007. I was broadcasting on private servers about 3 or 4 or 5 months before that. But early 2008 I've been on Blog Talk Radio, and I have, you know, on average, and the average has actually been going up, I have anywhere from 3 to 5, sometimes up to 700 listeners and downloaders, or downloads of my program daily on Blog Talk Radio. You know, now some of those aren't unique listeners, they're returning listeners, but they're taking the time to download it, presumably to listen to it. When I download podcasts, I listen to them on my MP3 player. So this disproves this point. I don't depend on the government to do this. Matter of fact, my internet connection is because of the free market. I have computers I can forward on my desk because of the free market. I'm able to read articles on my computers, my laptop that I take down with me into my recliner and do research at night while I'm I'm hardly watching TV anymore. I'm doing a lot of research, and I find it's more relaxing for me to do research on my laptop and get my show ready for the next day instead of coming up here and just a flurry of activity to get everything set up for the show. The show notes page is already set up by the next, before I go to bed at night, which is big load off my desk there. But I have all this, what I'm doing here, because of the free market. I have this Hunley t-shirt. Let me get, I'm covering it up. This Hunley t-shirt, there it is. Because of the free market. The government didn't give it to me. I have this hat, this U.S. Navy hat, because of the free market. My glasses, the lights, the flags in the back, the American flag, the Confederate battle flag. That's over my left shoulder. The whole 9 yards. I have it because of the free markets. And I get my opinion out there because of the free market. Okay? YouTube is a private company that allows me to do this. Hopefully someday they'll start monetizing things again to the point where I can make a living off of YouTube. But, there's other ways to make money off of these videos besides just making money off of YouTube. But like I said, I got to disagree with him here. He says that snowflakes get it right to begin with, and I just want to go back up to what he was talking about here in the beginning. He says, in his view, in Ulrich's view, is that we should resist the temptation to rehash these debates. Doing so would overlook the fact that through generational shift has occurred, widespread caricatures of students are as overly sensitive, vulnerable, and entitled snowflakes fail to acknowledge the philosophical work that was carried out, especially in the 1980s and 90s, to legitimate experience, especially traumatic experience, which has been dismissed for decades as unreliable, untrustworthy, and inaccessible to understanding. My question to Mr. Bear here is, when these people want a safe space because someone's saying something they disagree with and they consider it a microaggression against them, and that's their experience. In my opinion, there's nothing legitimate about that. There's nothing legitimate about that. These people feel they want to be part of this victimhood ideology that's going on out there that, oh, look at me, I'm a victim. This guy said something harsh, or this woman said something harsh that hurt my feelings. Okay? Yeah, I acknowledge everybody has feelings, but feelings, again, are very subjective. And if my freedom of speech offends you, even though I don't use profanity, even though I don't personally attack anybody, if my free speech offends you, that's on you. It's not on me. You know, if you don't want to be offended, don't listen. But you don't have the right to shut down somebody else's free speech. You don't have to listen to it, but you don't have the right to stop other people from listening to that. And that's exactly what's happening with this Antifa movement and with these the anti-freedom folks that are out there protesting other people's freedom of speech, especially on university campuses. They, in my opinion, they don't have that constitutional right, and they should be held to task for that. They should be held accountable for that. You know, and like I said, I disagree with Mr. Bear here about, well, there's a philosophical shift that's going on here. No, we just have a bunch of people that feel entitled, especially in university. And trust me when I tell you, folks, I come up against this all the time, that people that have degrees, and no, I don't have a degree, a college degree, they look down upon me. Well, you don't have a degree. How can you possibly have an opinion about anything? And then when I come back, tongue in cheek, I'm a rogue scholar. Well, what do you think about them apples? And if you look at my Facebook, I went to a school over in Italy, and loosely translated from my Italian, it's called the School of Hard Knocks. I'm not an idiot. I can look at my surroundings and judge things and see how things actually work, do research on my own, use reason, common sense, logic, and sort of bounce things out to see if this is so or this is so, or I found out this information that contradicts this information, so I need to go back and make sure I'm understanding everything okay before I change my mind about things. It's very troublesome that people want to claim the victim, and in doing so try to shut down the freedom of speech and expression. You shouldn't have. You just can't allow that. Society won't survive. We just won't survive. We're going to an Orwellian society, like George Orwell's predicted. This has been the Dan Clemens Show. I'm your host, Dan Clemens, your constitutional warrior member. If you aim at nothing, you hit it every time. Have a great rest of the day. God bless. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.